guys, welcome to Mii Yao Talks. I'm your host Ayman Zayaour. As you can see behind me اليوم نحن we're at ELMIR Brewery. Before we introduce our special guest, we want to thank our sponsors, Altos and Mentos, who are newly on board with us. Please, if you want us to keep going and help us, please share, subscribe, and like. Thank you. Chris, hi.
Hi, Ayman. How are you?
Good, good. Chris, you're the co-founder and brewmaster of
Yes.
ELMIR Brewery.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
Chris, can we have a shot of tequila before we start?
With pleasure, and I'm going to pair it with some Enfe.
صح.
For
Today
the
we're
sake.
not gonna be doing a cocktail. We have the perfect complementary for tequila, which is ELMIR.
Yeah, which is Enfe. Actually, it's a sour, salty beer. So the sourness تبعها والsaltiness تبعها, they go very well مع الtequila.
And it's called either a chaser or boil maker. Yeah.
Chaser, if we don't want to complicate it, like you explained, actually, the Boilermaker is a bit more complex than what I thought. Definitely, I'm going to sip a bit through that, not to have it as a full
Is
shot.
it too much? Yeah.
I feel so. I feel like, yeah, this is, yeah.
Okay, we'll sip it through.
Yes, cheers. It wasn't too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Chris, before we start talking about beer and what you guys do, خبرنا شوي عن حالك.
Okay.
What's your background? What did you do?
So basically, I studied chemistry in Lebanon, and then I did a research master's in chemistry abroad. And after I came back from my master's, I worked a bit in environmental consulting. And then my partner, Noel, came up with this idea of a brewery, and he suggested it like 10 years ago, I think. And we immediately went through with this idea with Marc, also our third partner. And I studied a bit of brewing. Actually, I did a degree in brewing, and then I did the degree in distillation. And that's where we are today. So that's
Okay. And what is ELMIR? شو ELMIR?
Well, I guess the idea initially was a crazy one in the market, in the Lebanese market at the time. Nothing was really pointing to us doing or introducing a new beer to the country, but we felt like we lacked this. I want to say consistent craft, pleasurable beer, and we took up this challenge. So ELMIR is initially this idea, and then it shifted 10 years later to something or a brewery that tries to make true quality, serious beers for people. I don't know if it answers your question.
No, it does.
not.
It does perfectly.
So, yeah.
But أكيد أنتوا you decided to open in a very challenging country. يعني.
Yeah.
You're going into a market that was completely dominated by very إذا بدك commercial beer, if you want to say so.
Yeah.
What made you go for Lebanon?
Okay, so beyond the poetry of what I'm going to answer, really, there's something that really binds us to Lebanon. إنه نحن متعلقين بالبلد اللي عايشين فيه, and we didn't conceive doing something outside of Lebanon. إنه ما له معنى بالنسبة لنا, نحن هون وعايشين هون, and we wanted, honestly and humbly I say it, بس إنه we want to push the industry forward. يعني consuming industrial beers and these commercial beers is valid, of course. يلي هيدا نحن ما عم ننكره. But at the same time, we wanted to prove to ourselves first, and then to people, that we can make serious, good artisanal or craft products in Lebanon. Although the barriers were high, يعني all the raw materials منن موجودين بلبنان. We have to import everything. But ELMIR basically was, it means prince in Lebanese, right? And we wanted, this is our ambition, right? To set ourselves as like the princes of actual beer in Lebanon. Again, I say it humbly, but with a lot of confidence also.
No, you have
so that was the idea. ليه بلبنان, it didn't make sense elsewhere. بالنسبة لنا يعني شو ما نروح elsewhere, just doing a beer there. Well, sure.
So you wanted to focus on the market here and push it. يعني.
Of course.
Which
push
is
it forward. Consumers, fellow breweries, bars, bartenders, proving to everyone that we can have craft and consistent quality beer.
Talking about consistency, you're a very creative guy. يعني.
Yeah.
So how do you manage between being creative and keeping the consistency?
Okay, so it's a complex question with a complex answer, but the fact is consistency means delivering each time the same product to consumers. Today, if you label a product, let's say Enfe, if you label it as Enfe and people try it for the first time, you have a duty and a responsibility to the consumer to produce the same beer, the same sensory profile every time. يعني كل ما حدا بيشرب أنفة مفروض يقول لحاله this is what I drank a year ago.
صح.
Or 6 years later بيقول لحاله okay, this is أنفة. This is the part of consistency, and this happens a lot in the background بالبrewery, how we control our data, what type of measures we take when we produce. All these things help in consistency, and also I'm going into a bit of details in production. You look at your data with a bit of BOD, so you take a step back, you look at the averages, where your data goes up and down, how you can control these على equipment. That's the part of the consistency. The creativity, there are two parts of creativity. The part where you release new beers. This new beer stuff is when you start creating a new beer, you're not trying to be consistent at first. You're trying to find the right profile you want. This is the creativity part, and this is why we have beers like Enfe, Elif, and Erze, and Facardino, where we can let go a bit more. But there's also the creativity where you need to optimize your beers. يلي هن the classic beers that are always available. Base تبعنا IPA, Pilsner, Wheat Ale, and Amber Ale. They're still the same beers, but the creativity is optimizing them without influencing the final taste profile. It just gets better,
okay.
But it's the same beer. And this is where you need to be quite ingenious to understand where you can control your process, where you can do a minor modification that will help the final product without changing the beer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was it hard to إذا بدك تخرق السوق اللبناني with craft beer?
It wasn't hard because of competition. It was hard because people بوقتها يعني عم نحكي in 2018, late 2018, summer 2019 وبعدين صار اللي صار, and then I'm skipping 3 years يعني basically.
هودي حنحكي عن بدنا نعرف
أكيد لأنه أثروا فينا كلنا يعني إنه بس it wasn't hard because there was competition. It was actually hard because there was no competition لأنه people were not I want to say educated. I don't mean it in a way إنه نحن بنفهم وواحدا بيفهم, بس people were not accustomed أو منهم معودين يكون عندهم variety of craft of beers available. إنه we know إنه when you go to a bar قبل at least إنه بدي بيرة, okay عندي هاي وهاي, right? أحيانا موجودين. What we faced as a challenge was إنه you have four beers that all different, and then it took time for people to get used to the product they actually like more. لأنه we don't expect everyone to like the 6-7 beers we produce. We expect people to have preferences, and this is where it took time, and this was the real challenge of making people familiar or accustomed to the variety of flavors you can have or styles you can have in beers.
And craft beer يعني.
وcraft beer ككل يعني it wasn't a category that was very prevalent بالmenus يعني إنه ما العالم okay beer we used to have 3 beers right all هن و4 إنه okay now you go in with ELMIR 1 2 3 4 you're like والله صار في شيء يعني.
بس هوديك كانوا كاتيجوري وحده.
مزبوط.
One style انتو you introduced the whole full style of beers to accommodate people's taste.
To accommodate people's taste, to get them curious, to try different things. And this is where we say, and we believe in it, competition is there for people to be curious and try things that are different. So today ما بنسبنا نكون player لحالنا.
Healthy competition.
أكيد healthy competition is essential. It drives us forward.
It keeps you going.
Yes, exactly.
Otherwise بتحس حالك إنه you're on top of the world وما حدا في بوجهك.
شو عم نعمل يعني إنه we're done.
This is the natural course of how things go.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna come and try to do what you do because you.
We set the standard, let's say.
Exactly, because this can be done here. Why don't we do it again? Which is nice. يعني you push people forward without knowing.
Yeah.
Okay. هلا بتعرف دايما بسأل كل حدا بيطلع معي عن المشاكل اللي صارت بلبنان.
Yeah.
And how did يعني أنت بعالم البيرة when you have a brewery like this, how could you sustain going through the خصوصي إنه عندكم هون إنه this is beer. This goes off after a while.
Yes, and that's the main challenge.
عرفت إنه for me the challenge in beer is completely different than being an entrepreneur عندك مطعم. عرفت it's completely different.
Yeah, it's a different set of
How
challenges.
did you, in the world of beer and breweries, did you face the challenges.
Okay. And when you say challenges, you're meaning 2019 financial crisis, الأزمة, then the port explosion,
بعدين حرب،
COVID,
بعدين-
port explosion, حرب, right?
عم نحكي بفايف
Black
Black Mirror episode.
مش معقول. It was crazy. يعني هلا أول شيء, and it's very important to say that if we didn't have the trust of the investors part and validating our concept as a beer, we wouldn't be here today. Hey, one. Second, if you didn't have the trust of the people who consume our beers, our consumers, our backbone, we wouldn't be here. هلا, how did we face the challenges? 2019 was a tough one لأنه بلشت الأزمة الاقتصادية واللعب بالدولار وباللبناني ومدري شو. So, first of all, at first it was more of a trying to stabilize our price as much as we can so we don't create high barriers للعالم لأنه if you look at our price, even currently in dollar terms, it didn't really change. But it was a challenge navigating it with the Lebanese pounds thing لأنه we business-wise, we quickly shifted to dollars. We priced in dollars and some people of our customers were like, guys, this is too much, you can't be doing that. But we're like, this is the only way we can keep it stable. لأنه we have one price and then it plays with the SAR الصرف. Otherwise we wouldn't be able to sustain our operations. كمان we're 10 people at ELMIR and we have we need income to pay our employees and the team that's making the beer what it is. So this is the prime concern first. So we did that and a year later people were like, oh yeah, you were right, you did that. You're one of the first in the suppliers that did that, and it made sense at the time. That's how we kind of kept afloat in 2019. Well, then COVID was a headache. COVID was the toughest one, honestly, because most of our sales rely on bars and people like you, people in the industry that believe in our product and want to consume it, and mainly consume it on trade. That's what we say, right? They consume it in the bar, at the restaurant. They consume it there. Disclosures were quite difficult. We tried to be creative by doing home delivery services and stuff. It was okay, but it wasn't enough. So that's where the investors part come in, and this is what kept us afloat after COVID. Then came the port explosion, which was I don't have any comment about that. So we tried to sustain ourselves. وكمان كان في أزمة البنزين من بعدها. I think we can't forget that. كهرباء وبنزين and stuff. So we had to be very forward or have a lot of foresight إنه نقدر نعمل stocks that are enough in terms of keeping our van running around and delivering while we had these mazout and benzene problems. So this was a lot of procurement and supply chain work. During COVID also this was an issue because suppliers abroad, now we rely exclusively on imports of barley, of hops, of yeast, of cleaning products, everything. Bottles, caps, everything is from abroad. So we had to do a lot of forward planning before deciding how to best deal with it. We had also to make sure we don't over order, because you don't want to keep your products in the storage and not being used and then having to discard them, because that's also a financial loss. So this came into play, and well, what was the next crisis? The war, right? The war.
The small war and then the big war.
Yeah, the chapters of it. If people didn't, at the time, weren't going out and bars all closed, we wouldn't be very happy. Today, during the war actually, because bars and people, I'm not going to say kept going out because we're resilient. It's not the narrative I'm trying to push for, but people still had this vent they wanted and these communities they wanted to go to, which are bars and which are, maybe I want to say one of the only public places in the city, let's say Beirut. We don't have parks where people can go out. غير حش Beirut, if you need to catch it from 7 to 2 p.m. and it's a complicated public space. So I want to say bars are the driving force of these small communities and microcosms. If people didn't have these spaces during the war, we couldn't be able to stand. أنا أنت as individuals and also as ELMIR.
انتوا لقيتوا انه I think the market is loyal to your beer. There's something about the beer that I think it's the genuinity of it.
We don't want
the
to trick.
consistency of it. You guys are always amazing. You train, you help, you want to deliver the right message to the people.
Exactly.
هلا if we want to go a bit to the هلا كنا عم نحكي عن إذا بدك your title as a brewmaster.
Yeah.
صح؟
Yeah.
If we want to tell people what is the process of you getting to a brewmaster, and if there's something after being a brewmaster.
Yeah, there are many things before and after, which is why I think it's also an interesting.
In short, the process you have to go through لتوصل لهون.
So basically, when you start brewing beer, you're a brewer, okay? You're a brewer who understands the interplay between the different raw materials, barley, hops, yeast, and water, and understands how to make them work together and how to create a recipe. That's, I don't want to say basic, but that's the minimum you need to know and you need to understand. And for that, to understand this, you need to know a bit of chemistry, a bit of biochemistry, a bit of biology, microbiology that makes understanding what you're working with easier. That's what I started in as a brewer. Then you get knowledge, right? It can be through books, it can be through formal education, brewing programs, brewing degrees, and then you can move on to becoming gradually a head brewer. Head brewer also deals with a lot of administrative things which are related to supply and procurement. Getting the right amount of barley, getting the right amount of hops. People forget that, and or people don't, it's not that they forget, بس إنه ما بيعرفوا مزبوط إنه part of our job is also making sure إنه عندي enough بضاعة تعمل بيرة. and عندي enough بضاعة تعبي البيرة بالقنينة, because this is part of our job. إنه وإلا I'll just be this creative guy who بحط بيرة بالخمارة and it stays in the tank and no one actually consumes it because we didn't put it in the bottle because we lacked bottles. So head brewer, وقت نطلع على head brewer ببلش يكون في كل هالadministrative procurement supply chain part where you need to make sure you get the right things at the right time in the right quantities, which is actually complicated.
خصوصي انه imported. So
yeah, so you need to take into account انه اوكي انا اذا اليوم بطلب الشعير مش هيجي بعد بكره.
شهر يمكن.
ايه شهر شهرين ثلاثة sometimes, and sometimes you get these phone calls where guys سكروا الريد سي because الحوثية والما بعرف شو فالفويج راح يطول 20 نهار زيادة وانت بتكون طالب at the right time for what you know historically, and then you're like what do I do now without incurring a lot of costs للشركة. انه we can't always say okay بجيب كل شيء على السريع بالطيارة. It costs a lot of money, so you need to make the right decisions at the right time. That's the head brewer. Then the brewmaster, it's a fancy term, but it actually means that you are at a position where you can check production and procurement, R&D and optimization, so new beers, optimizing your equipment, and quality control. There's a big part that we didn't touch on yet is the quality control part, and making sure you're taking the right measures at the right time, measuring the right things, understanding what the data is telling you. All these things need a lot of بعد شوي on the daily work so that you can have the bigger picture. And when you have the bigger picture, you can, with your team, of course, you're not alone doing it. Otherwise, you'd be a brewmaster on yourself. It doesn't make sense, and it's kind of sad not having a team. You
managed to create a team around you.
Yes, of course.
You delegate a bit of the job. I'm sure you're on top of it, but you do delegate.
Of course, I'm the brewmaster. There's a head brewer that's Sherbil, and there's a brewer that's Joe. So they both of them have defined roles in doing things. And fortunately, I want to say at ELMIR, we also have our brewer also handles things related to draft, which are an essential part. We talk about beer, production, but we forget that beer is never. You can never take it alone in a brewery and in the bottle. The whole point of beer is someone opening the bottle and pouring it and sharing it with someone. So there's this whole serving part that we are also keen on. I think I diverged a bit from your initial question.
You're doing it right. No. بس هلا لأنه حكيت عن quality control.
Yes.
بالنسبة لك, it's two questions. I want you to elaborate on them. One, what is Inta as a brewmaster? What is your philosophy in beer?
Okay.
Because everybody has their own philosophy when it gets there. Two is, what do you think is the most important process in making beer?
Wow. Okay.
And which one do you think is the essential one?
The step,
هلا
right?
يمكن عم نحكي عن quality control. Maybe you said quality control.
Maybe
would
it's
be
that.
one of it.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's.
Or if you want to arrange them in إذا بدك the processes.
Or compartments.
هاي
وهاي.
We're gonna go through that. You know how do you end up with beer? But which one do you think أنت out of your experience is the most important one?
Okay. So
there might not be an important.
I don't.
Might link together.
And it's the two questions are linked. My answer is linked to both questions. You asked me about my philosophy, and you asked me about if I can single out a process, a component, an item that is the most important for beer. I think my philosophy is holistic, and the philosophy of ELMIR is holistic and not viewing beer as a simple sum of barley, hops, yeast, and water. Add them up, وهيدي the recipe, press the right button at the right time, and that's it. It's not going to make the beer. Well, I don't want to poeticize it more than what it is, but there's a lot of
نفس.
There's نفس.
إذا بتاكل أكلة عند حدا.
Yeah, we're not cooks, we're chefs. في procedures, وفي quality control, and you need to understand how to make the raw materials work together. You need to understand how to. Okay. Sorry, I'm going back to my answer on quality. Okay, there are many things we can measure in beer when we produce it, okay? When we make it, we can measure pH, we can measure how much sugar there is, we can measure how much haze or قد ايه عكرة البيرة أو liquid at the time. We can measure الحرارة, we can measure the pressure. كلهم we can measure them. Understanding what to measure and when is what makes the beer consistent. وإلا بتكون عم بتجمع data على الفاضي. يعني if I measure everything every time, what do I do with this? And this is where if you take a step back and you view it holistically, you understand that بالمالت لازم ركز على هول البارامترز لأنه هول عم بيأثروا effectively بالفاينل بير اللي عم تشربها أنت. طيب بالهوبس I need to focus on this aspect لأنه I control this aspect. The other aspects I don't have control. I can measure قد ايه صفر الهوب او ما صفر الهوب، بس هل بيأثر عن جد عندي بالبروسيس؟ إذا لا why do I measure it? What can I take from this measure or this data? اوكي وهيدي بعدنا هوبس وخميره ومي بالبروسيس قد ايه سرعة الترمبة البامب how fast do I pump things? Does it matter or doesn't it matter? And that's where when you view it تاخد اوكي المالت والهوبس والبروسيس وكل شيء. You view them individually, then you look at the bigger picture. That's where the sum of everything is the quality control and is what tells you, okay, this is what I need to measure to make the same beer and to keep on optimizing it. And I think this is my philosophy. I'm not sure if I answered it, but I need to also add one thing. I'm not a traditionalist. I hate this word, but وعم بحكي عن the global craft beer industry. اليوم كتير and it takes 2 minutes on Google or ChatGPT or whatever to ask and check what is happening today in the production side of craft beer. وفي كتير هيك شغف على انه بدي احط passion fruit وشاي اخضر وبيتزا. There's a beer that's made with pizza, by the way. I've seen it with my eyes, like
pizza.
pizza حاطينها بالهيدا, which is that's where the traditionalist side in me, I'm like, okay, but what does it do in the beer? Anyway, so what I was saying is that بالcraft beer ببرا, they're very, very, very هيك enthusiastic about trying a lot of things, which is great because that's what we love about the craft beer industry. انه ما في limits إذا بدك. You can try anything, right?
بس أنت لحالك فيك تجي تروح لحالك تعملهم انه just for the sake of
trying it for the thought experiment. So هل craft beer industry او الماركت كتير معبب بهيك breweries كتير بدهم يعملوا pastry sours milk stouts and a lot of very dense intense beers. I think we just need to take a step back and do beers that are drinkable, and that's extremely important. Beers or cocktails or anything needs to be drinkable and pleasurable. مش إنه overloading it with things. I think that's my philosophy, actually.
How important is carbonation in beer?
It's essential. It's essential and it's something you need to control. مش بس what you put in the bottle or in the keg. The keg is what you need to pour beer from the tap.
أنا جيت عملت training عندك صح؟ حكينا عن
Yes.
carbonation. I think you said there's 2 types of carbonation.
Forced and natural.
100%. أنت which one do you use?
We do forced carbonation. Okay.
And do you mind elaborating on what's
Of course,
the
no. Of course, it's very fine for me. And what I want to go to is that ما في شيء مخبى. Eventually, ما عم نخترع البارود. What we're trying to do is making good beer all the time. That's the basic thing. So we do forced carbonation. Natural carbonation means بprocess fermentation. So again, bad step back. Fermentation. You need sugar, yeast, and water. So سكر, خميرة, ومي بيعملوا الكول وبيعملوا غاز. Right? أو السكر نحن بنستخرجه from the grains, from the malt. Okay? أو during the fermentation بتحبس الغاز يلي عم بيطلع وبتخليه بالliquid, or you let it out. And you let it out naturally and you let it go. Why do you let it go? Our belief is that it also drives off some off flavors that are generated during fermentation, which is something that happens with all yeast, right? Then, when you're done with fermentation, you go to the phase that's called maturation. So بتسقع البيرة in the fermenter and you pressurize it. And you start adding CO2 بيصير بيفوت بيعمل dissolution. So liquid بيشرب الغاز.
This is why it has to be cold, because the colder the liquid is...
Exactly. The faster this process happens. It's actually very complicated to do it at hot temperature. وعم نحكي hot يعني 15 degrees is hot.
صح لأن CO2 is friends with cold temperatures.
Yes, exactly. Any gas you want to put in a liquid, you need cold temperatures. So بنسقع البيرة, we pressurize it, and we can also add a stream of constant bubbles بالبيرة وبتسكر من فوق. I'm basically vulgarizing it in a bit, بس إنه بيكون الخزان هيك سكر عم فوت CO2 وبيضلوا عم بيعمل bubbling وبيعلى الضغط. شوي شوي بتشرب البيرة ال CO2, and this makes for consistent carbonation and finer bubbles and cleaner beer. That's why I prefer forced carbonation.
So you think CO2 is a big player in the
It's
world of
essential.
beer?
Otherwise, you'd have flat beers. There are a couple of styles that are meant to be drank room
Flat.
temperature flat.
Okay.
They're British styles. Okay, they're called cask ales. So basically بيكون في الكاسك الخشب على البار and they basically serve from it. Okay, it's a style that's served room temperature and flat. ما فيك يكون room temperature وكاربونيتد ما بتزبط.
Okay.
ما بتزبط بيطلع CO2 من هيدا الكلينكس اللي بيحطوها اجمالا بالبيره بيقولوا لك سكوب البيره aggressively وطلع CO2. If it's cold it will stay inside. If it's hot.
بس is it true؟
Yes, it's very true.
مش ما تعمل لك نفخة يعني؟ أو
ايه
شيء؟
مشين exactly. So إذا بتشرب بيرة مبوزة like some people like to advertise, you're actually keeping more CO2 in the liquid. Okay, وقت تسكب بيرة
ما لازم تسكبها على مهلك صح؟ I
مش
think
كتير على مهلك.
it has to be a bit...
yeah, maybe we can try with one beer. What do you want to have?
برجع بعيدة ما بعرف حبيت الألف كتير.
يلا ألف it is. ألف it is. Let me get an ألف.
هاي تالي.
Yeah. So, if you want to serve beer, they're right with... No, this was a used one. That is it.
ايه هلا عم بس أنا لأنه I believe in aggressive a bit of a...
I-
aggressive, it's the way you put the beer. in
Yeah,
the
I
cup.
mean, there's a way of like textbook pouring it, but no, well, you would go like this, just trying to keep a bit of CO2 out. This foam, هيدي الفوم كلها is actually CO2 كان بالبيرة جوا. وإذا منه طالع لبرا, it will happen in your belly. This is what's the نفخة. So when you drink بيرة مبوزة كتير, this won't happen, right? Okay. I didn't need to be super aggressive. Sorry, while pouring it.
So what's the perfect temperature يعني?
It depends on the style of beer. So this type of beer would be drank at hotter temperatures to get all the flavors out. So we would say تقريبا 8 to 10 degrees for ألف. ألف is with دبس الخروب. I don't know if I mentioned that.
We're gonna talk about that.
Yeah, we'll do the full lineup يعني. But some beers like wheat ales or pilsners are meant to be drank at 2 or 4 degrees. It's never below zero.
Never.
Never below zero, -2 وهيك. إنه حرام. First of all, you won't have all the flavors. And second, as a consumer, if it's a bad one, you won't feel it. Third, if you drink it that cold from the bottle directly, أكيد رح تنفخ. It's mathematical. منا قصة yeast, منا قصة yeast أو خميرة, منا قصة corn, منا قصة maize, منا قصة شيء. It's قصة carbonation. And that's why it's so important, serving temperature و how you serve it.
أنا عندي مشكلة مع زبايني بالبار. When I pour beer, I always tend to make it go a bit foamy.
Yeah.
بيقولوا لي إنه ليه
ما بحب الفوم.
شوي مشان ما تخسر. إنه again بدك تشرب 3-4 ولا بدك تشرب وحدة؟ إنه this
the answer is the right answer for me.
This is what we try to say.
For sure.
عندي سؤال كتير سئيل. هلا people know beer is what is the base of whiskey. Would you ever do whiskey?
Listen, as a thought experiment.
أنت you've studied distillation.
Distillation, yes, not for the whiskey part. I studied it for other more local ideas. بس
would you ever venture into that?
I don't think so. I don't think the okay, whiskey is a complex beverage, right? It's a complex spirit. It holds a lot of history, and a lot of locality, and a lot of tradition, and you need this. Whiskey humbles you. إنه بتطلع على الويسكي على الهيستوري تبعها. فيك تيجي تقول إيه رح أعمل ويسكي. You need coopers, you need barrels, you need to understand the wood, you need to understand these things. Distilling is something. Aging and blending are things that are. بدك تعرف حالك وينك. As an individual, as a producer, كلنا عنا كبرياء و ego, and we want to try things and do things, and it's great because it drives us forward. بس بمحل ما you need to know what you want to do and how you can do it best. إذا بدي أجي أعمل ويسكي كيف ما كان, I can't do it. It's possible.
I think you gave me the perfect answer.
Yeah,
بالعكس.
that's it.
That was a very humble answer. بالعكس.
That's it.
You gave respect to each one. هلا عندي سؤال تاني لأنه when you work in a brewery like this, I think كمان very important aspects are hygiene and safety measures.
Yeah.
How important are نقول safety measures on their own, and how important is hygiene?
Okay. So safety, نحن we deal with high pressures. يعني okay. To start with, دولاب السيارة فيه 2 bars. Okay, دولاب السيارة إذا ببج فيه 2 bars. نحن we work minimum at 2 bars when we add CO2 to the beer. وقت بنستعمل بخار or steam, it's at minimum of 2 bars كمان, وفي حرارات عالية. We're talking 120 degrees. المي تغلي at 100 degrees. نغلي الwort or the liquid at some point at 100 degrees. We do manipulations with the fermenters that require us to add room temperature things to cold beer, which can create something we call a geyser. If we don't implement the right safety measures, people will get injured. And in كان أنا أو my colleagues and the employees at the brewery would get injured. And it's I don't want to even say it's important. It's essential. Otherwise, we wouldn't be running the brewery. So safety starts with you, and then it starts with how you transmit the knowledge. No knowledge, their requirements.
Basics.
It's basics, and it's very strict. You can't play around with safety. So that's one. Hygiene. My brewing teacher once said we, as brewers, we're glorified janitors. So basically, 60 to 70% of our time is not making beer.
Cleaning.
Yeah, sorry guys, sorry everyone.
Yeah,
We're not making beer every time.
It's so important.
It's cleaning. اليوم I have one machine that's making 7 beers, and I have 9 tanks that need to hold the production of these all these 7 beers throughout the year. My hygiene is not creating a new machine every time. Like كأنه أول نهار اشتريتها, كأنه ما حدا طبخ شيء عليها أو ما حط شيء فيها. I'm gonna affect the taste of the batch بعده. إذا ما عم بتلميها وما نضيفة, not just for the visual, okay? It's about what's inside. It needs to be spotless and completely sanitized. في شغلة بالwine وبالspirits where the ABV level or the alcohol level is high. عندهم leniency معينة إنه they have the capacity to protect their liquid every time because alcohol kills bacteria, right? So beer and cider and yeah, just us.
Brewed يعني sake كمان is
Sake, yes, have lower alcohol levels. These lower levels are not protecting the beer enough, so it can be contaminated with مثل قطر إذا بتخليه برات البراد راح يعفن لأنه البكتيريا إجوا أكلوا السكر. Beer has sugar in it, not added sugar. It's a sugary drink. So it will be contaminated if you allow it to sit in an unclean, unhygienic place. That's why we need to be super hygienic with the breweries. 60% or 70% is what we do is cleaning.
اوكي ليك قبل ما ليك عبالي كثير نعمل تيستينج على كل البيرز
Yeah.
هيك بس في شغله حكيت انا وياك قبل ما نبلش البودكاست we were talking عم نحكي عن نقابه
Yes.
عن controlling و measures و you told me how hard it is to and I want you to إذا أنت you don't mind I want you to tell the people how hard it is
To import something.
Exactly إنه أنت عم تخترع craft beer بلبنان. How hard is it to export it from Lebanon and how easy is it to import to Lebanon a craft beer?
Okay.
And why and what do you think is لأنه أنت قلت لي أنا لما أنت قلت لي في نقابة
مصنعي الكحول
ما كنت بعرف أنا فكر في نقابة المطاعم والفنادق وهذه هي
That's it. No, it's هي مصلحة فيها نقابة, right? نقابة بليز اعذرني ما بعرف بالضبط شو التسمية تبع النقابة. في
بالعربي صعبين
نحن 100% وبس انه في نقابة لمصنعي المشروبات الكحولية والمقطرين يلي بيقطروا الكحول يعني بيعملوا عرق بيعملوا رام بيعملوا ويسكي بيعملوا كذا شغلة. في نقابة ل our شو our job our industry.
بس ما في regulations و rules.
No, في regulations and rules that are outdated and that are not being updated. One particular challenge لإلنا وللcider makers ولل other breweries للwine makers is importing yeast. Yeast اليوم خميرة تعتبر أو تصنف legally كمواد مضافة للمشروب. نحن كفيلوسفي وحتى الواين ميكرز الخميره منا مواد مضافه. الخميره مواد اوليه واساسيه لتعمل المشروب تبعك. اذا عندك الخميره الغلط او الخميره اللي مش مزبوطه رح تطلع بيرتك منا منيحه. طيب going from there انا اذا تعتبر مواد مضافه I need to go على وزاره الصحه واعمل ملف فني وملف اداري. I won't go more into these details. هول الملفين بدهم requirements strict كتير وراء ودوكيومنتس من برا من وين عم تستورد الخميره تبعيتك ومنهم هالقد يلا هبطب جيبهم يعني للوراق وبدك تصدقهم بوزاره الاقتصاد هونيك وبدك ترجع تصدرهم بوزاره بالسفاره اللبنانيه بالبلد المنشا بعدين تجيبهم على وزاره الخارجيه تصدقهم ترجع تبعتهم على وزاره الصحه يرجعوا يقبلوا يدرسوا الملف. all these things وطبعا هن بالنسبه لوزاره الصحه هن عم يحموا المستهلك وما عم شارع بهالموضوع ومعهم حق يحموا المستهلك. للمواد الكيميائيه اللي بنستعملها للتنظيف بفهم هالشيء لكذا شغله بفهم هالشيء. بس الخميره اليوم اذا في نقابه فعاله وفي عالم بالاندستري عن جد عم نجرب شوي نهينا تنخلق بيئه وين غيرنا بيقدر يقول اوكي ما عندي هالقد باريرز تجيب واستورد اغراض. اذا ما في عنا هالنقابه او هاللوبي lobbying is not منه شيء عيب. هو كرمال نغير تصنيف الخميره. I'm taking one example. تصنيف الخميره من مواد مضافه
لا essential
لا مواد اوليه because we create products. It's normal that you have ego and ego can be good by the way. It's just how you use it and how you leverage it.
But it's the marketing aspect of your industry بالضبط.
Yeah.
It's on a completely different level. It's interesting, very interesting. But what's nice about you is إنه أنا since we opened our businesses like 4 or 5 years ago, we've been loyal without even getting to know you. I got to know you very well a few years ago.
Yeah, like 2 years I think ago.
But again, this is what's so nice about you guys is that you gain the trust of people who understand what beer is, especially in the industry, without even having to rub it in their face.
It's the product that speaks. And if it doesn't speak, I mean, we have a duty, انت وأنا, people in the industry, we're making people drink or consume something. وعن جد I believe in it fundamentally, and ELMIR believes in it fundamentally. إذا اليوم عم تجي you can bleep it whatever, تتمنى على العالم وتعطيهم شيء منه مزبوط وما عم تعمله مزبوط. Why؟ طب ما خلي البرودكت يحكي. إذا البرودكت عم يحكي, I don't need to even be present as a person or as an individual. My product speaks for itself, for the expertise of the team, for my expertise, for the vision that we have, and that should be enough so that people are loyal and understand what we stand for. Listen, we like drinking. نحن بنحب البيرة. إنه at the end of the day إذا البيرة منا طيبة والعالم ما عم تحبها, نحن مش هنحبها أساساً. So if we open one of our beers and we don't like it, we're not going to say it's good. That's bullshit. We don't like to bullshit ourselves, and we don't like to bullshit people. And that's what makes, I think, I honestly, عن جد, sometimes people tell me, أنت كتير شاعر وما أدري شو, بس إنه لا عن جد, we have a duty and a responsibility. طب ما العالم عم تشرب بيرتك, بدك تعطيهم شيء منه طيب.
They're consuming, عم يفوتوا شيء على جسمهم.
ايه, وغير إنه منه طيب, أساساً you have a, مش إنه responsibility, مسؤولية هالقد كبير, إنه إذا عم بتخبص والعالم رح تتأثر من وراها, تبي شو عم تعمل.
You have a big weight on your shoulders.
Yes, and you also.
Yeah.
And the products you serve at Mii Yao, at Maracay, at Ter, all these things are important. مش important, essential.
So Chris, جينا على ال tasting session for the whole line. We had to take an enforced PP break.
Well, beer drinking imposes it on you.
Which is only natural.
Yes.
But what are we going to start with?
We're starting with the 4 classic beers that we do that are always available. They're beers that you can find in other craft breweries, إجمالاً كstyles. And then we'll move on to the Lebanese terroir, which are beers that are a bit more unique and part of our signature. Plus a very special beer that holds a dear place in our hearts that we'll talk about when we reach it. So we'll start with the wheat ale. إجمالاً beer is made with barley, most of the beers, 90% of the beers. Some beers are made with wheat with barley, which is the wheat ale we're going to taste. It's a German-inspired style of beer that's called Hefeweizen or Weiss beer. It's easy to drink. Refreshing, slightly acidic, not sour, 5% ABV, and you have some aromas of banana and clove that come from the yeast and from the wheat.
It's an unfiltered beer, right?
Yeah, it's an unfiltered. All our beers are unfiltered. This particularly is a beer that's hazy, so بدنا إياها تكون عكرة.
But what makes craft beer?
So nice question, because craft beer is about 3 main things. It's about variety of the products you offer. This already is an example of that. Second, it's the volume. You normally produce much less than industrial commercial beers. And third is the human input in the beer itself. Of course, we are consistent and our systems are there to stay and to stick. But there's a lot of impact that a brewer or a person who handles the process, there's a lot of impact in what they do to make the beer what it is today. So that's what craft beer is. I think it's a set of many components.
Okay. Yeah. Next up is
the Pilsner. Pilsner is a word we hear a lot, and we have examples of industrial Pilsners in the country. Ours is significantly more tasteful. It has more character. It's a bitter beer, contrary to what people would think. Pilsner is a Czech style initially. Our example is a German style of Pilsner, so German malt, German hops, German yeast. It's slightly bitter with some sweetness and maltiness from the malt itself. And as you can see, we don't filter it, but it's a bit clearer than the wheat ale that you drank before.
How do you filter beer?
Filtered and unfiltered beer is a hot topic, I guess, today in the beer scene in the country. All our beers are unfiltered. Would you like it? Is it something you would enjoy drinking?
Course, yeah.
Cool. So filtration is when you remove things that stay in the beer that keep it akra or not clear. It's a matter of choice and philosophy in the brewery, and it doesn't make for a good or bad beer. It's just a choice you have. If I had the opportunity, I would definitely filter the Pilsner more, so it would make it clearer even, but the rest, as it is, it keeps some flavors, it keeps some texture, it keeps a lot of things nice in there.
But unfiltering the beer, does it backfire at some point? Does it, not
no.
taking out the residues or does these affect?
No, if you're good with your oxygen levels in your bottle and in your keg, no, it shouldn't affect anything. And proof of that is that actually even the Pilsner that's unfiltered won a gold award at the World Beer Awards last year. So it's really a matter of philosophy and choice. So
and talking about awards,
Yeah.
What else did you guys get an award
we
for?
won awards with all our Lebanese terroir beers. So Enfe won world's best Gose. I'll say what Gose is in a bit. It's a German style of sour beers. Aleph won gold and silver at the World Beer Awards for experimental beers. Erze won a gold award for wood-aged beers already at the World Beer Awards. And yeah, we're kind of happy with what we got with these beers. It's not that easy, honestly.
It's a big thing.
Yeah, it is.
4 out of 7 beers that are gold medal. So.
Yeah. So, and I don't talk about it enough. So
no, it's something to take pride of, Amjad.
Yeah, for sure.
Bravo, guys.
Thanks.
Now we have
Amber Ale.
the Amber Ale.
So Amber Ale, I just want to show 2 things that are a bit different. Anytime you start getting more color with the beer, this is something, I don't know where the camera is, I think it's here. Yeah, so this is something we call pale malt. Okay. So it's kind of pale in color, it makes for yellow colored beers. If you start adding a bit more darker malts, which is like this, there are caramelized malt, you will increase the color of the beer and it will become darker. And the darker the grain is, the darker the beer will become. So in the Amber Ale, we use a lot of caramel malts that give it the color and the taste that's a bit sweeter than the other beers. Sorry.
How do you get to caramel? Why is it called caramel malt?
Because the way they malt is basically they dry barley or wheat at a certain temperature. The higher the temperature is, the longer the time the grain is exposed to this temperature, the darker the grain becomes. And you can also produce like completely roasted malts. Yeah.
Does this process create more sugar in the barley?
No, on the contrary, it actually reduces the sugar content. Okay. So the more sugar is in the pale grains, the less sugar is in the roasted grains.
Okay.
All right. I would describe the Amber Ale as a beer that has some marmalade, jam sweetness from the yeast and the malt, and it also has this caramel component from the grains, and with a touch of bitterness that fades away.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'll keep the malts here. Since we're talking about different styles of beer, I also have to mention one thing about the fact that beers are normally drank in particular glassware. We would never advocate for beers to be drank in a bottle because you would miss out on so many things visually, and carbonation, as we talked before, plays a huge role.
Variation.
So, yeah, exactly. So these 3 different glasswares we have. This is normally for carbonated beers where you want to keep the CO2 inside. It's like a highball or like carbonated cocktails. You would keep them in this. This one is your standard beer glass where it could go for most of the beers. And this one is like a cognac glass where you can actually smell. So an IPA would be served in this type of beer, an amber in this type of glassware. Pilsner and wheat would be served in this. So this is also part of craft in a way. Like we don't want to unify glassware. We don't want people to just think that Beer can be just drank like that.
Me.
Give it the weight it needs, right?
And it's true that it makes a huge difference.
Of
having
course.
a beer from a bottle or from a glass.
For sure. Same way for cocktails, it would
You
be.
can aerate it. You can give it some time to rest.
Yeah, and
CO2.
you can, exactly.
100%.
It would just make the beer shine better.
Okay, now we're moving on to the IPA,
Yeah.
which is my مش لأنه it's my least favorite. I don't like hoppy beer.
Hoppy beers.
But
When?
let's talk about it.
I understand why you might not like hoppy beers. It's a fair and valid judgment. But hops also have a brilliant and beautiful way of adding complexity to the beer. Hops are basically herbs we use, or plants we use that add bitterness and aroma to the beer. In general, bitterness can be quite tough sometimes to sustain, but that's where the aroma part of the hops helps in easing out this bitterness. And this is where, as a brewery, you need to understand how to complement it also with the malt to complement this bitterness. So hops, when they shine, they will give you these aromas of passion fruit, lychee, guava, all these exotic tropical fruits that would brighten up your beer and at the same time make it a bit unexpected, because you'd smell it and you'd feel like, oh, seems like a juice or something, and then you'd be hit with the bitterness, and it's kind of nice.
So أنت as ELMIR,
Yeah.
when you serve me this drink, right? How do you want me to perceive your beer?
Okay, so
You know, what is your main goal? Like, if I had a beer, what would you want the consumer to feel?
first of all, we want, like, again, without poeticizing it more than what it is, we want people to enjoy it and feel something, right? When you drink it, it's not like just okay, shabira, right? We want people to feel emotions when they drink it, so for them to remember aromas, flavors that evoke things from their past, from things that they aspire to. It's about the emotion when you drink something, and we fundamentally believe in that. And the emotion can be simple, the emotion can be complex, but it really depends on your own life path, let's say. We wanted to evoke things, right? Evoke emotions, evoke feelings, sensations that maybe you forgot and that are hidden within you. But one beer sometimes can do a lot of magic.
This is poetic.
Yeah, this is poetic.
You said you won't be poetic.
Yeah, I mean, I have this is one of the sides I have that I couldn't help it, right? So, yeah.
Now we're moving on to one of my favorite. I love this beer. I think you did it a few years ago, and I fell in love with it. It's like a في أولاد Mexican version.
Say it. Yeah, it's like a Mexican beer, right?
Yeah. But again, to tell the people the link between Anfi and why you did the link with Anfi and ELMIR, salt.
Yeah, salt is from Anfi. So I just want to correct one thing. I understand why you say Mexican, because in Lebanon, when we say Mexican beer, we mean beer with lemon and salt on the rim, right? So people and us, all of us humans, normally associate lemon with sourness. So when something is sour, we would immediately think about lemon. And it's a salty beer, of course, because there's sea salt from Anfi. It's also a sour beer, but the sourness is not citric acid, so lemon sour. It's sourness that comes from Lebanon. So we use microorganisms that we normally use to ferment milk into Lebanon. We use it in the beer. So that's why it's a sour, salty beer. It's not the same sourness as a Mexican, but that's why people, or you would say, it's type
So
of...
you're using bacteria that help
that make Lebanon what it is, yeah, exactly.
To help give it that...
And that makes it even more Lebanese in a way. And just for the record, it's a German style of beer that we call Gose, G-O-S-E. I don't know how to pronounce it in German.
But what does that mean?
Gose is a German style of salty wheat ale that is produced next to Leipzig, but the actual birthplace is the town called Goslar. Okay, and there's a river that crosses Goslar that's called the Goz River. And this river takes its water by passing through salt mines underground. And traditionally at the time, عم نحكي يعني thousands of years ago, إنه العالم, they didn't have the capacity to treat the water. So they had to do with the water that is next to the brewery. So they used this salty water to make a wheat ale that used to sour at the time, and it made for this style. And it was going to die in the 1950s as a style, but an American brewer rediscovered it and made it relevant again, thankfully. That's why we could
I
recreate.
would never think it's a German style.
Yeah, it's a German style of beer, yeah.
But the way you linked Enfi salt with the, I think it's perfect.
Yeah, it's really cool. And it won World's Best Goes this year, last year. This year? Last year? Last year.
Yes.
I'm asking, I'm Stein بصديق. So salty, and in the aroma you can feel a bit of like citrusy aromas, but it's not from the sourness, it's from coriander seeds. We use also coriander seeds in this beer because it's part of the Goes recipe.
Would you say it's the most light colored beer?
Yeah, for sure. That and maybe the wheat, or yeah, that and the wheat. They're pretty similar in terms of malt.
Oh, I love it.
It's a very refreshing type.
Summerish.
Summerish.
It's the perfect summer beer.
It goes very well with Lebanese food, by the way, because it can, this acidity it has, it rinses off so much of this oily, dense flavors we have in our meza. Perfect with Lebanese food.
It's true. Once you put it that way, it's very true.
Yeah. We really want to be able to pair beers with whatever we eat. Beer has its place on a dining table. It's not just something you just consume and drink. It can also elevate your culinary experience and your night itself by associating with the right flavors or tastes or foods.
ديك بدي مرق شغلتين نحن عم نحكي.
Sure.
Before we go to the Aleph. One, the theory of the birth of beer.
Oh, interesting. Yes.
Where do we get credit for?
Yeah, we should get credit.
But let's not speak about Lebanon. Let's speak
about the region. Yes,
the
yes,
region,
yes.
yeah.
No, it's very easy to say. We
You
should.
said it's
Mesopotamian. Yeah, present day Iraq is the first recorded recipe of beer, first recorded beer recipe, and it was actually. It's a bit controversial in terms of archaeology وفي كتير debates على الموضوع إنه is it this one or another one next to it, but beyond the point. It was a hymn to a goddess called Ninkasi. Ninkasi was the goddess, Sumerian goddess, even before Mesopotamia. Sumerian goddess of beer and fertility, if I'm not mistaken. I know the beer part. The rest is something else. But she was the goddess called Ninkasi, and the hymn or the ode was written as how they actually used to process grains, and they weren't hops at the time, but how they processed the grains into the final beer. So that's first. So yeah, people think that بيرة ألمانية أو بلجيكية وهيك. It's untrue. It's actually from here, and we also need to remind people that distillation is an Arab also invention. So birthplace of beer is the Levant, so we're happy with that. Yes, yes. And they used to pay salaries also in Egypt with beer. So
yeah.
Beer actually means liquid bread, so it was something people used to drink or eat, drink, to sustain themselves. And they used to pay bijran bira. You can see on some platelets from Egypt where they used to write down the salaries. And بيطلع لك 2 gallons of beer. Inta salary for 1 day work is 2 gallons of beer or whatever. So yeah, that's something really present in our area.
Okay, now we're going to a beer that you surprised me with, اليوم.
Yeah.
Please talk about it.
Aleph. Aleph is actually the first beer we did in this Lebanese terroir. If you noticed, we tried to start from the softer, mellower beers up to the more intense ones. That's why we don't start with Aleph. Aleph is the first letter of the Phoenician alphabet, testimony of our presence here for years and years. Even the salt marshes of Enfe, they're as old as Phoenician presence in the country. So Aleph is the first beer in this series. It was actually inspired by Belgian Christmas beers, where in Belgium they use sugar to increase the alcohol level without increasing the heaviness.
You enhance flavors more?
You add alcohol first. The type of sugar you use will influence also the flavor. Alif, the idea was, okay, we want to make an alcoholic beer, right? But we also want it to be tasteful. And we want this taste to come from something particular and local. And we're like, oh, Dibs al-Kharroub. Dibs al-Kharroub is something extremely tasty, and it's very sugary, and it's very chocolatey. So we fermented the beer with Dibs al-Kharroub, and it makes for an 8.5% beer. The rest is all 5. This one is 8.5%. Quite intense with like these aromas of red fruits and dark chocolate and a taste of bubblegum, I want to say. It comes from the yeast. Really, it's a serious one.
This is the reason I'm tipsy today.
Yeah, cheers. I'm happy.
Lake,
Yes.
what do you do with the bottles? Do you have the philosophy of recycling, upcycling, or
For me, from 2015 till, for us actually, from 2015, أول أزمة زبالة. It actually predates 2019. We talked about أزمات. من 2015 it started tickling us إنه ما فينا نكون إنه hey, we want to stay in Lebanon, we're fighting for Lebanon ونحن resilient وكل شيء وبقينا, and we're not tackling our waste issue يعني as a production, as a factory. We generate a lot of waste. إن كان wastewater, إن كان solid waste, إن كان glass, إن كان carton تبع صناديق البيرة, إن كان labels أو وراء. We could never understand throwing them and dumping them. So our sheet glass is upcycled. There are no recycling facilities. So it's upcycled. Several parties take the glass from us, they cut it, they do cups, they do mugs, they do ashtrays, candle holders, whatever, as much as we can reduce this impact. Carton تبعنا كل شيء كرتون, we recycle it. وراء, we recycle. Plastic, we recycle with the certain NGOs or social enterprises because obviously we need to state that today the government doesn't provide.
True.
And the state doesn't provide.
Unless you take the initiative of being self-conscious about
yes, and this is where we can't preach something we're not doing.
And I didn't know. I'm just telling you. Before we started the episode, somebody asked you if I can throw this here. No, it's
they're like, no, this is plastic, conical glass. Yeah.
So hence why I'm asking you.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. No, we can't ignore this problem. ما فينا نجي اوكي عملت معمل كثير حلو البيرة بتعقد and then everything we dump not in my backyard ويلا روح. It doesn't make sense. Really, it doesn't make sense for us. And for the country, you know, we're trying to portray something Lebanese. At least let's portray also the right values, the right approach. And we don't need the state everywhere. تنعمل قصص منيحة.
No, it says a lot, you know, once you have a craft beer and you understand how it's all linked.
It's circular.
It's about like ethics or a way of life and philosophy.
For sure.
It says a lot.
For sure.
We're not gonna move to
Erze. Erze is a teaser. We're gonna relaunch it soon enough, so I just put it for a teaser. So yeah, that's about Erze.
Let's talk about this beer.
Facardino. Facardino is an emotional one. It's a one-off beer for now. It's a beer we brewed with Cane di Guerra. They're an Italian microbrewery in Alessandria in the northwest of Italy. And we brewed a beer called Facardino. Facardino is فخر الدين. بالعربي بالتلياني فكاردينو بالعربي فخر الدين as ELMIR obviously. It's a Schwarz beer, so it's a German black lager that's 5%. Schwarz means black in German. Okay, so Schwarz beer. Yeah, it's 5% ABV. It's brewed with date syrup. We brewed it a year ago with the guys from Cane di Guerra who are very good friends of ours. And we're very happy to let you taste it. It's we don't have much left, so yeah, it's the only can we have. There's something enjoyable in the can, right? Yeah, it's like. Oof. Yeah, that's frothy. That's dark. A lot of caramel malts. Date syrup also plays a role. Really nice, quite sweet, not too sweet. A bit of honey, and not from the honey, but from the date syrup. I don't think you will ever really feel the date. But yeah, you can smell.
It's about the caramel.
Yeah.
What would you consider it on the nose?
Wait, let me remind myself of the nose. صار لي زمان ما عم بشربها لأنه we still have 20 cans of it.
But if you want, it does give you that depth of dates out of Chelsea. And on the nose, it feels like a
honey.
Honey, more like oak honey.
Oak, molasses, honey.
Yummy.
شي. Very sippable. صراحة, it's a very drinkable beer. So yeah.
So now our next step is a tour.
The process شوي على المعمل, and then we'll see how it ends.
في احكيك هلا ولا لا؟ انت بالروحه بدك تلحقنا وبالمجي بدك تسبقنا.
Okay. I don't know if you can listen to the bubbling sound from the fermentation.
Okay. Let's start with here.
Yes. We can start, right?
Yeah?
Yeah.
فينا نبلش؟ Yeah.
All right. People think that the more you automate your process, the less you have space for creativity. No, it's up to you to be a bit more creative than
Okay, and
that.
how many bottles are you producing yearly home?
Currently, we're producing 200,000 bottles equivalent. So when we say equivalent, it means even the kegs, we convert them in terms of numbers to bottles. So equivalent is 200,000. We're gonna move to 10 times more than that. So
10 times more?
Yeah.
That's 200,000.
2 million bottles.
2 million bottles.
Equivalent, yes.
And now you're talking about having the opportunity to export.
Yes,
right?
yes, of course. I mean, we need to be also aware of what the Lebanese market, what the cap in the Lebanese market is. We still believe there's a lot to do locally, but definitely our eyes are on export and at least putting Lebanese craft beer on an international scene. We definitely.
You have the GCC.
GCC is definitely now.
You have the European, which I think is going to be easy for you to.
Yes, for sure.
You have the American.
American is a plan, but it's actually, in terms of regulations and stuff, it's a bit more complicated because you can't forget that beer also spends some time in the transport, so you don't want to really ruin it. We currently export to Japan, which is something we're really happy with, and it actually makes sense with Mii Yao and everything. But yeah, we do export to Japan.
Because Japan, what are the odds?
We got connected to a distributor of Levantine Oriental products in Japan. He loves ELMIR, and he actually pushed for it in the market, and we actually have a couple of orders per year, so we're really happy with Japan. We export to Japan, Maldives, Jordan, and a bit in Switzerland, but these are markets that are still to be explored. We see the potential and we know there's potential. That's why we need to give ourselves the capacity to produce. So yeah, so that's it. That's why we want to build a new brewery, and I think it's worth shooting another episode there. So it's going to be really nice. In brief, just so that people understand what goes behind the process, we have two steps in the two main parts in the brewery. We call them the hot side and the cold side, okay? So everything that's hot is confined within these realms. This is called the brew house. And a brew house is where you mix your raw materials together before adding the yeast. So malt, أو شعير, water, then hops, and then you transfer everything to the fermenters. So this step, the cooking or the brewing step, takes around 7 hours, where you first crush your grains, you add them in the first vessel, you mix them with water. You start, yeah, sorry.
Where are the grains crushed? Inside the vessel?
No, they're actually crushed in this room. I don't know if it's not really easy to access, but it's crushed in a miller.
Okay.
So, جروشة بالعربي. So بنجرشهم, and we just crush them a bit. Then we mix them with water in the mash tun, where we do something called mashing. Mashing means creating a paste, basically, like mashed potatoes, right? So what happens with the increase in temperature is that the sugar or the starch in the grains gets broken down to smaller sugars. And we continue heating until we reach the set temperature we want. And then we transfer all the grains and the liquid. It's no longer water. We call it wort. We transfer it to the wort, W-O-R-T.
Okay.
Or it's, if you want to think about it, it's like grape juice for wine.
Okay.
What we will ferment is the wort, okay? It's like apple juice for cider. For us, it's wort, okay? And till now, we're still doing whiskey also. Goes back to your first question.
Yeah.
Until we add the hops. So we transfer the mash, which is the grains and the wort, to the Loterton. Lotering is a German word that means to clarify. So basically we separate the grains and the liquid in the Loterton, and then we take the liquid and we pump it back to this vessel. The grains stay there, so we separated them effectively, and we dump them, or we sell them to farmers. Currently the volume doesn't justify doing much, but for the new brewery, definitely something just to
And farmers, when you say you want to give them to farmers?
pigs, cows, and so as cattle feed.
Okay.
It's as an additive to their current diet.
Okay.
Really good quality malt. حرامي ضيعون
That's
يعني. So when we have the liquid here, we boil it, we add the hops. When you add hops to a boiling or hot liquid, you get bitterness. If you add hops to a cold liquid, you get aroma. And that's how you can get both in the IPA. You get bitterness from here, and then you get aroma from dry hopping. When you add hops to cold beer, it will just extract the aromas. After the boiling step, we do something called a whirlpool. So we turn the liquid, obviously not with our hands because it's a lot of liquid. We turn it with the pump, and the hops that we would have added will stay in the middle of the vessel, and then we extract clear liquid without hops. We transfer it to the fermenter, and that's where we move.
Okay, before we go to the fermenters,
Yes.
we're gonna skip this section. This section, Tali, if you can get that. What happens here?
This is basically on-the-spot quality control during the process. This is where we measure our pH, so we understand whether our beer is ready for yeast, ready for the several steps that are going to happen. This is pH. This is actually something called rapid fermentation, and this is called wort spoilage. We check if it's safe and it's not microbiologically contaminated. This is where we measure the sugars, and these are the important part, our sheets, our brewing sheets, our fermentation sheets. I'm just going to give you a glimpse at when we brew a beer. That's all the information we put into the brew. We know the volumes, the raw materials, the lot numbers, the batch numbers. We're very keen and precise with that. So this is our station for quality control.
Quality control.
This is not the lab. It's just basic production quality control. When we're done with brewing, we go to the fermentation step. I don't know if we can listen to the bubbling.
Are we getting the voice? Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. This means that the beer is actually fermenting, and CO2, natural carbonation, forced carbonation. CO2 is going out, beer is going well. This beer is this beer is cold. Actually, I can get some information from here. I know it's a Pilsner. I know when I filled it, when I need to dump things from it, and stuff. So this is not fermenting, this is in maturation. So after brewing, we add the yeast, we let it ferment at high temperatures, so between 15 to 20 degrees. And then after fermentation is done, we drop the temperature to 0 degrees.
It's 0, yeah.
This is pressure, but normally we would add a digital probe to get the temperature. So you can see it's quite cold.
PSI.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is pressure. And when we pass by, I don't know, Tali, if you can get the sound from the hose. This is Enfe fermenting. This is boop, boop, boop.
This is IPA.
This is IPA. This is Enfe. This is IPA. Where's the Enfe? Well, don't get that shot. Sorry. Hey, the IPA. This is the Enfe actually.
Okay.
شفت الهوز طالع. Yeah.
And what's happening here?
Here. So basically this is fermentation that's very vigorous. We add a hose so that ما بتفور البيرة, and it just bubbles CO2 throughout. إذا ما في bubbling, it means it's not fermenting. It means عندنا مشكلة بالخميرة. And these small fermenters are for our R&D.
These
Yeah,
are where you like test beer.
Test beers, test different raw materials. This is empty, this is full. These three are full. This has arze in it, actually.
Okay.
These three have arze in it.
And when since we're going to the buttons.
Yes.
What is importance of the black color?
Yeah, black is extremely important for many reasons. Beer is sensitive to light, and the best protection against UV light is black. Brown is less good, green is worse, and clear bottles are bad. Okay? So if you don't have any preservatives or additives or things that keep the beer stable, you'd want to protect it as much as you can with the packaging, with the low oxygen level. So we rely on it for that. And it's also something also visually. There are no black bottles except ELMIR today in the market. So we have both marketing components and quality components.
There's brown. I think the closest to you is brown, right?
Yeah,
black
dark brown.
But when you talk black, you're saying it's the best.
It shields the beer
best,
completely from UV.
And now this is where we get to the complicated. I remember doing a heavy training on this, and I really remember nothing of it.
Oh God!
Do you mind if we visit the lab?
Yes, of course. Yeah? It's a pleasure to visit the lab.
Khalid,
please.
Can you follow him to the lab?
Yes, please.
So Chris, هون.
Yes. هذا اللاب where we do all our microbiological and chemical tests that are related to quality control مش production مش وقتها عن جد عم نطبخ. So فينا نقيس ال CO2 والأكسجين بالقنينة through this أو بالتانك with the machine اللي بتطلعها لبرا. We also do microbiological tests. So بنشيك إنه الخميرة ماشي حالها ما في غير قصص غير الخميرة عم بي they're contaminating the beer, and this happens with the microscope and the incubators. Yeah, basically this is the workhorse of why we know what's happening with our beer. هون هيدا الشيء بيصير. This is the magic. Normally we wouldn't be here now. Hey,
we're allowed here.
Now with the Mentos even we're allowed here. This is really an exception, so enjoy it.
Well, how did incubators?
Yes, this is where you control the temperature.
Okay.
Basically بتزرع البيرة بيقولوا زرع. بتزرع البيرة على ميديوم وبتشوف إذا في غصص غير الخميرة اللي حطيتها بيكبروا على حرارات مختلفة. So this would be at 27, this would be at 40, let's say.
Degrees?
Yes. I'm giving examples now.
Okay.
And the bottling, finally. This is the last step of the process. عنا هيدي, this is the kegging part. So basically kegs هن هول ال 20 liter containers يلي للدرافت بير بيتعبوا بيتعبوا بهال hose. Basically it's very basic. You hook it to the fermenter and you fill your kegs, or you go into bottles, and bottles go through 4 steps. First of all, عنا labeling, which is on the record the toughest part of all the beer process. 1 millimeter البرغي بيغير بدك ترجع تظبط الليبل. It's really complicated, and you have a duty to get the best label possible. People are paying money for your beer, and there's a legal requirement with your label. So it needs to be on point. The lot number with the expiry date needs to be very clear. كل شيء needs to be perfect. لأنه at the end of the day you owe it to the people.
Okay. Hey. Why do you label before?
You label before because normally you would fill the beer at like 0 to 2 degrees. تعرق القنينة كتير فما بيلزق الليبل. So you label before and then you fill. Okay. Right?
And it goes?
Yeah, it goes linearly. You have 3 steps. So أول step كنا قلنا 4 total. هون عندنا 3 steps. عندنا rinsing للقنينة. Basically هون محل هاي نلقط القنينة بتنقلب بينرش مي جواتها. It rinses it. And then it drains the water before going to the filling يلي هو هون. It's a rotary filler بنسميه. في 6 روس بيعبوا البيرة ورا بعضهم. قنينة 2 3 4 5 6. And then when you're done with the filling, you cap the bottle and then you rinse it because بتكون شوي فارت من البيرة تما تدبق, which is not very cool. You rinse it and then you take it from here. You put it in a box, you sell it to people, and I guess people would enjoy it, right? Thanks, man.
Habibi.
Thanks, Ayman. Oh, sorry. I know you're burnt.
No, it's fine. Thank you guys for being with us. Again, if you want to help us grow, share, subscribe, and follow. We'll see you next time. Thank you.